What would you do if the person who promised to love you forever drove you to a landfill and left you there to die? 8 months pregnant, no phone, no help. Contractions starting as the sun disappeared. Emily Shaw trusted her husband completely. She believed him when he said they were going to sign insurance paperwork. She believed him when he said it was just a shortcut. She believed him right up until the moment he looked her in the eyes and told her to get out of the car. But here is what her husband and his mistress never expected. Someone was watching. Someone society had forgotten.
There is no
A
doubt
homeless man with a cracked phone and a secret
he
that would
is the
destroy
one.
everything they had planned. What happens
No one
next
gets
will
left
make you
behind,
question
sweetie.
everything you think
We
you know about
made
betrayal,
it!
survivor,
It's
and
absolutely
justice.
beautiful.
Stay until the end, because the twist at minute 75, nobody sees it coming. Drop a comment telling me where you are listening from right now. And if this story moves you, that subscribe button helps more people find their way here. This is dumped at the landfill. The pain came in waves, each one stronger than the last, and Emily Shaw pressed both hands against her swollen belly as she lay on the cold, uneven ground of the county landfill. The smell of rust and decay filled her lungs with every desperate breath. Above her, the sky had turned from orange to purple to black, and the last traces of daylight disappeared behind mountains of discarded metal and forgotten things. She was 8 months pregnant. She was alone, and the man who had promised to love her forever had just driven away, leaving her to die among the trash. 12 hours earlier, Emily had believed her life was perfect. The morning had started like any other in their beautiful home in the suburbs of Charlotte, North Carolina. Emily moved through the kitchen with the careful, deliberate steps of a woman in her third trimester, preparing breakfast while sunlight streamed through the windows. The house was worth $1.2 million, a fact Daniel mentioned often when entertaining clients. It had 4 bedrooms, a 3-car garage, and a backyard where Emily had already imagined teaching their daughter to ride a bicycle. Daniel came downstairs at exactly 7:15, his dark hair still damp from the shower, his smile bright and practiced. He crossed the kitchen and kissed Emily on the forehead, letting his lips linger just a moment longer than necessary. That should have been the first warning sign. Daniel had not been affectionate in months. His phone buzzed on the counter, and Emily watched him glance at the screen before quickly turning it face down. The gesture was small, almost invisible, but it settled somewhere in the back of her mind like a splinter she could not quite reach. "Who was that?" she asked, keeping her voice light. "Work." He poured himself coffee without meeting her eyes. "Actually, that reminds me. We need to go sign the final paperwork for your maternity insurance today. The office closes early, so we should leave around 4. Emily frowned. "I thought we finished all of that last month." "There was an issue with the coverage dates. Just one more signature, and we are all set." He smiled again, and this time it reached his eyes. "I want to make sure you and the baby are completely protected." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they sat in her stomach like stones. "Brooke is going to drive us," Daniel continued, scrolling through his phone now, attention already elsewhere. "I have a conference call I need to take on the way." Brooke Miller, Daniel's executive assistant, 29 years old, blonde, and possessed of the kind of effortless beauty that made Emily feel like a beached whale every time they were in the same room. For the past 6 months, Brooke had become an increasingly constant presence in their lives, always with a perfectly reasonable explanation. She was helping Daniel with a major deal. She needed to drop off documents. She just happened to be in the neighborhood. Emily had mentioned her concerns exactly once. Daniel's response had been immediate and devastating. "You are being paranoid," he had said, his voice cold in a way she had never heard before. "Brooke is my colleague. This is exactly why I did not want to talk to you about work stress. You always make everything about you." Emily had apologized. She had felt guilty for weeks afterward. Now, standing in the kitchen with her hands on her belly, she pushed down the unease that flickered at the edges of her thoughts. Daniel was right. She was probably just hormonal. Pregnancy did strange things to a woman's mind. The mail arrived at 9, and Daniel grabbed it before Emily could reach the door. She watched him flip through the envelopes, pausing at one before tucking it into his briefcase. "What was that?" she asked. "Just insurance stuff. I will handle it." Another splinter, another thing she chose to ignore. At noon, her phone rang. The screen showed Rachel Bennett's name, and Emily felt a familiar twist of guilt. Rachel had been her best friend since college, The kind of friend who knew all her secrets and loved her anyway. But lately, something had changed. Rachel's calls went to voicemail. Her texts remained unanswered. Emily told herself she was just busy with the pregnancy, but the truth was more complicated. 3 months ago, Brooke had pulled Emily aside at a company party. Her voice had been sympathetic, her expression concerned. "I probably should not say anything," Brooke had said, "but I think you should know. Rachel has been saying things about you, about how you have let yourself go since getting pregnant, about how Daniel could do so much better." She had touched Emily's arm gently. "I just thought you deserved to know who your real friends are." Emily had not confronted Rachel. She had simply stopped returning her calls. Now, watching Rachel's name flash on her screen, Emily felt a hollow ache in her chest. She let it go to voicemail. At 3:40 p.m., Brooke's silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Daniel grabbed his briefcase and helped Emily into the back seat, his hand solicitous on her elbow, his attention focused entirely on her comfort. In the rearview mirror, Emily saw Brooke watching them with an expression she could not quite read. The car pulled out of the driveway, and Emily settled back against the leather seat, one hand resting on her belly where her daughter kicked and turned. Through the window, she watched her neighborhood disappear behind them. The beautiful houses, the manicured lawns, the life she had built so carefully over the past 4 years. She did not know it yet, but she would never see that house again. The drive started normally. Brooke made small talk about the weather, about a restaurant she wanted to try, about nothing at all. Daniel took his conference call, his voice smooth and professional, offering nothing that Emily could hold on to. The suburbs gave way to commercial districts, then to industrial areas, then to stretches of empty road that Emily did not recognize. "Where are we going?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "I do not remember the insurance office being out this far." "Shortcut," Daniel said without turning around. "Relax, babe. We know what we are doing." The words should have reassured her. They did not. The streetlights grew farther apart. The buildings became older, more decrepit, abandoned. The smell hit her first, seeping through the car's air vents despite the closed windows. Rust and rot and something organic. Something wrong. Emily's stomach turned, and not just from pregnancy nausea. "Daniel," her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Daniel, where are we?" He did not answer. The car slowed, tires crunching over gravel, and through the windshield, Emily saw shapes emerging from the darkness, mountains of twisted metal, piles of discarded furniture. A sign barely visible in the fading light, County Waste Management Facility, a landfill. They had brought her to a landfill. The car stopped. Brooke turned off the engine, and in the sudden silence, Emily heard her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. "Get out, Emily." Daniel's voice was flat, emotionless, the voice of a stranger. "What?" The word came out as a whisper. "Daniel, what is this? What are you doing?" "I said get out of the car." Brooke opened her door first, stepping out with the casual ease of someone who had done this before. She stretched her arms above her head, tilted her face toward the dying sun, and smiled. Emily's hands found the door handle. Her fingers refused to move. "Daniel." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, her voice cracking on his name. "Daniel, please, the baby, our daughter, whatever is happening, we can fix it. Please, just talk to me." He finally turned to look at her, and Emily saw something in his eyes that made her blood freeze. Not anger, not hatred, nothing. He looked at her like she was already gone. Brooke laughed. The sound cut through the evening air, sharp and cruel, and Emily watched as the woman she had trusted circled around to her side of the car. "God, she really thought you loved her." Brooke's voice dripped with amusement. "Daniel, this is almost sad." She pulled out her phone and aimed it at Emily, the screen glowing in the gathering darkness. "What are you doing?" Emily asked, her voice barely audible. "Making memories." Brooke smiled. "The life insurance kicks in if you are missing for 7 days, right, Danny? Though honestly, with all those medical complications you have been having, I doubt anyone will be surprised when they eventually find the body." Life insurance. The words hit Emily like a physical blow, driving the air from her lungs. She thought of the paperwork Daniel had been so eager to handle, the policies he had insisted on updating, the envelope he had grabbed from the mail that morning. $2.3 million. That was what her life was worth to him. You are going to kill me. The words felt surreal, impossible, like lines from a movie playing in someone else's life. You are going to kill me and our baby for money. Daniel flinched, just barely, just for a moment, but Emily saw it. Something human flickered behind his eyes before Brooke touched his arm. Danny. Her voice was soft, intimate. We talked about this. She is a complication. You said so yourself. He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the flicker was gone. Get out of the car, Emily. I am not going to ask again. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. Later, Emily would not remember deciding to fight. She would only remember her hands shooting toward Daniel's jacket, fingers closing around the phone in his pocket, a desperate grab for evidence, for proof, for something. He caught her wrist, twisted, pushed. Emily fell sideways out of the open door, her pregnant belly hitting the gravel first, sending shockwaves of pain through her entire body. She curled instinctively around her child, gasping, tasting blood where she had bitten her tongue. Above her, she heard car doors closing, an engine starting. Daniel! She screamed his name, forcing herself to her knees, reaching toward the taillights already pulling away. Daniel, please! Please, do not do this! The car accelerated. Gravel sprayed, and Emily watched the red lights grow smaller and smaller until they disappeared entirely, leaving her alone in the darkness. For several seconds, she could not move. The shock was too complete, the reality too impossible. She knelt in the dirt of a county landfill, 8 months pregnant, abandoned by the man she had loved and trusted for 4 years. Then the first contraction hit. The pain started in her lower back, radiating forward like a wave of fire, stealing her breath and forcing a cry from her chest. Emily doubled over, hands pressed against her belly, terror flooding every cell of her body. Too early. The baby was coming too early. No, Etna, she whispered the word like a prayer. No, 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 I know. No, not here, not like this. She forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, counting the seconds between contractions the way her doctor had taught her. The evening air was cold against her damp skin, and she realized she was sweating despite the dropping temperature. Emily looked around, trying to orient herself in the darkness. The landfill stretched in every direction, mountains of debris blocking her view of any horizon. But somewhere to her left, she could see a faint glow. Highway lights, maybe. Or a building. Something. She had to move. The first step nearly dropped her. Her legs trembled with shock and exhaustion, and the uneven ground shifted treacherously beneath her feet. But Emily Shaw had not survived 4 years of gaslighting, 4 years of slowly losing herself, only to die on a pile of trash. She moved. One step, then another. Each one sent pain shooting through her pelvis, but she kept going. She talked to her baby as she walked, the words spilling out in a desperate, continuous stream. We are going to make it, sweetheart. Mommy promises. We are going to get out of here, and we are going to be okay. You just have to hold on a little longer. Can you do that for me? Just a little longer. Another contraction hit, stronger than the first, and Emily had to stop. She braced herself against a rusted washing machine, breathing through the pain, counting the seconds. Too close together. The contractions were too close together. As the pain receded, a memory surfaced unbidden. Daniel, 2 years ago, showing her a photograph of a beautiful woman with dark hair and kind eyes. That is Nina, he had said, his voice heavy with carefully constructed grief. My first wife. She drowned in our pool. I could not save her. Emily had held his hand. She had comforted him. She had never questioned the story. Now kneeling in the darkness with her life draining away, she whispered the dead woman's name. Oh my God, Nina. She understood now. She understood everything. Another contraction. This one brought her to her knees, and Emily screamed into the empty night, her voice echoing off the mountains of trash surrounding her. She was bleeding now, not heavily, but enough to feel the warmth spreading beneath her. She was going to die here. She and her baby were going to die, and Daniel would collect his insurance money, and no one would ever know the truth. The thought made her angry. Emily Shaw had spent 4 years apologizing, 4 years doubting herself, 4 years being made to feel crazy and ungrateful and wrong. She had given up her career, her friends, her identity, all for a man who had never loved her. She was not going to give him her life too. Emily started moving again, crawling now because her legs would not hold her. She moved toward the distant lights, fingers digging into gravel and dirt, dragging her pregnant body over broken glass and rusted metal. Something sharp sliced her palm, but she did not stop. Something caught her shirt and tore it, but she did not stop. She kept moving. The world narrowed to a single point of focus. Left hand forward, right knee follows. Right hand forward, left knee follows. Breathe, move, survive. She did not see the man until he was right in front of her. Ma'am? Emily looked up. Through the haze of pain and exhaustion, she saw a face, weathered, bearded, creased with years of hard living. But the eyes were clear and sharp and filled with something she had almost forgotten existed. Concern. Ma'am, can you hear me? My name is Walter. I am going to help you. Emily tried to speak. Her voice came out as a croak. I was a medic, the man continued, kneeling beside her with movements that spoke of training and experience. Army, 20 years ago, but some things you do not forget. I need to check how far along you are. Is that okay? Emily nodded. At this point, she would have agreed to anything. Walter's hands were gentle but confident as he assessed her condition. She watched his expression shift from concern to alarm, carefully controlled. We need to get you to a hospital, he said. Now. He pulled a phone from his pocket, old, cracked, held together with tape and stubbornness. But when he dialed 911, someone answered. I need an ambulance at the county landfill off Highway 47, Walter said, his voice calm and precise. I have a pregnant woman, approximately 32 to 34 weeks. She is in active labor, showing signs of placental distress. Contractions are 3 minutes apart. Please hurry. He listened for a moment, then ended the call and turned back to Emily. Help is coming, he said. You just need to hold on a little longer. That is what I told my baby. Emily's voice came out in a whisper. That she needs to hold on. Smart lady. Walter shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled like campfire and unwashed clothes, and it was the most comforting thing Emily had felt in months. What is her name? Your daughter? Grace. Emily had chosen the name weeks ago, whispering it to her belly in moments when Daniel was not around. Her name is Grace. That is a beautiful name. Walter sat down beside her, close enough to offer warmth, but not so close as to crowd her. You know what grace means, right? Unearned blessing. A gift you did not expect. Emily felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Are you real? Or am I hallucinating? Walter laughed, a dry, rusty sound. Unfortunately, I am very real. The beard is real too. Wish it was not. Despite everything, Emily almost smiled. Why are you helping me, she asked. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Walter was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. I could not save my own family. Car accident, 6 years ago. My wife and my son. He paused, and Emily saw something flicker behind his eyes. I have been looking for a reason to still be useful ever since. In the distance, Emily heard sirens, faint at first, then growing louder. Red and blue lights appeared on the highway, turning toward the landfill entrance. They are here, Walter said. You made it, Emily. You and Grace are going to be okay. He helped her sit up as the ambulance approached. Paramedics spilled out, voices professional and urgent, hands reaching to lift her onto a stretcher. Emily grabbed Walter's sleeve before they could take her. Do not leave me, she said. Please, you are the only one who knows what they did. Walter squeezed her hand. I am not going anywhere, ma'am. I have pictures. I have video. Those people are going to pay for what they did to you. The paramedics loaded her into the ambulance and the doors closed. Through the small window, Emily watched Walter standing alone in the landfill entrance, his cracked phone still clutched in his hand. She did not know it yet, but that phone would change everything. The hospital room was white and sterile and filled with the soft beeping of monitors tracking 2 heartbeats instead of 1. Emily lay in the bed, an IV in her arm, her belly strapped with sensors, watching the numbers on the screen that told her Grace was still alive. Still alive. The words repeated in her mind like a prayer. The doctors had managed to stop her labor, but just barely. She was on bed rest now, strict orders not to move more than absolutely necessary. The next few days would be critical, they said. If they could keep the baby inside for even another week, her chances improved dramatically. Detective Linda Harris arrived at 8 in the morning, just as Emily was finishing a breakfast she could not taste. She was a tall woman in her mid-40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that reminded Emily of her own mother. Mrs. Shaw. Harris pulled a chair up to the bed and sat down without being invited. I am going to need you to tell me everything that happened. Start from the beginning and do not leave anything out. Emily told her story. From the morning in the kitchen to the drive that went wrong to the moment Daniel told her to get out of the car. She described Brooke's laugh, Daniel's empty eyes, the life insurance comment that still made her stomach turn. Harris listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small spiral notebook. When Emily finished, the detective was quiet for a long moment. The good news, Harris finally said, is that we have corroborating evidence. A homeless man named Walter Hayes was at the landfill. He recorded your husband's car, leaving the scene, including a partial license plate. He also documented the location where he found you and the condition you were in. Emily closed her eyes. Walter had kept his promise. We picked up Daniel Shaw and Brooke Miller at their apartment last night, Harris continued. They were drinking champagne and laughing when we arrived. Neither one seemed particularly concerned. They thought no one would find me, Emily said quietly. They thought I would just disappear. Well, they were wrong. Harris stood up, tucking her notebook into her jacket. Your husband is being charged with attempted murder, assault, and abandonment resulting in medical emergency. Ms. Miller is being charged as an accessory. With the evidence we have, they are both looking at serious prison time. Emily felt something loosen in her chest, relief maybe, or the beginning of it. It is over, she whispered. It is finally over. Harris paused at the door. Something in her expression made Emily's relief falter. Mrs. Shaw, I need to be honest with you. I have been doing this job for 20 years, and I have learned that men like your husband do not give up easily. He has money, connections, and no conscience. This case is strong, but it is not over until he is behind bars. She left before Emily could respond. For the next 48 hours, Emily allowed herself to hope. She watched the news coverage of Daniel's arrest, saw his face on the screen, heard the anchors describe him as a monster. Nurses brought her flowers from strangers who had heard her story. The hospital's social worker stopped by to discuss resources for survivors of domestic abuse. And then, on the third morning, everything fell apart. Emily was watching the local news when the press conference started. Daniel stood on the courthouse steps, freshly showered and impeccably dressed, flanked by a lawyer whose suit probably cost more than Emily's car. Behind them, she recognized Margaret Shaw, Daniel's mother, her face arranged in an expression of maternal concern. My client is the victim of a disturbed woman's accusations, the lawyer said, his voice smooth and practiced. Emily Shaw has a documented history of anxiety and pregnancy-related emotional instability. On the evening in question, she suffered a severe panic attack and wandered away from the vehicle while my client was on a business call. When he realized she was missing, he searched for hours before contacting authorities. Emily's hands went cold. Daniel Shaw is a loving husband who has been devastated by his wife's mental health struggles. The lawyer continued, he is not a criminal. He is a caretaker who has been unfairly persecuted by a system that refuses to listen to the truth. The camera cut to Daniel. His eyes were red, his voice cracking with carefully manufactured emotion. I just want my wife to get help, he said. I love Emily. I love our baby. All I want is for our family to be okay. Behind him, Margaret nodded solemnly. Emily has always been fragile, she told the reporters. We have all been worried about her for months. This pregnancy has been very difficult for her, emotionally. I think she just snapped. Emily stared at the screen, unable to breathe. 4 years of marriage, and she had never heard Margaret say a word against her. 4 years of holidays and birthdays and Sunday dinners, and the woman had smiled and hugged her and called her daughter. Now she was calling her crazy on national television. The news cut to footage of Daniel posting bail, $500,000 paid in cash, without hesitation. He walked out of the courthouse with his arm around Brooke, who had somehow transformed overnight from co-conspirator to traumatized assistant caught in the crossfire. Emily grabbed her phone and called Detective Harris. I saw it, Harris said before Emily could speak. I know. He is lying. He is lying about everything. I know that too, Harris sighed. But his lawyer is good, really good. And your husband has resources that most defendants do not. This is going to be a fight, Emily. I need you to be prepared for that. A fight? Emily's voice rose. He left me to die in a landfill. He tried to kill me and my baby. How is that a fight? How is that anything other than obvious? Because the system does not work the way it should. Harris's voice was tired, heavy with years of similar conversations. Because rich men with expensive lawyers can make the truth look like a lie. Because a woman's word, even with evidence, is never quite enough. She paused. I am not giving up, but I need you to understand what we are dealing with. Emily ended the call and sat in silence, staring at the wall. A knock at the door made her jump. She looked up to find a woman standing in the entrance, tall and professional, carrying a leather briefcase. Emily Shaw, my name is Jessica Lawson. I'm an attorney with the Charlotte Women's Advocacy Center. I heard about your case, and I would like to help. I cannot afford a lawyer. The words came out automatically, a reflex born of years of Daniel controlling their finances. I am pro bono. Jessica pulled up a chair and sat down, which means I work for free. The center exists specifically to help women in situations like yours, women whose abusers have the money and power to manipulate the system. How do you know he is an abuser? Emily asked. According to the news, I am the crazy one. Jessica leaned forward. Emily, I have been doing this work for 15 years. I have seen more cases like yours than I can count. And I am telling you right now, your husband's behavior, the gaslighting, the isolation, the financial control, it is textbook. He has been abusing you for years. You just did not have the words for it. Emily was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. I thought I was going crazy. For so long, I thought there was something wrong with me. There is nothing wrong with you. Jessica's voice was firm but kind. What happened to you is real. The abandonment was real. The attempted murder was real. And we are going to prove it. How? Daniel has money? He has lawyers? He has his mother telling everyone I am unstable. First, we need to establish a pattern of abuse. Jessica pulled a notepad from her briefcase. Did you document anything? Texts where he controlled your money? Emails where he isolated you from friends? Emily hesitated. I have some screenshots, things he said that made me feel like I was losing my mind. I saved them because I do not know why. I just needed proof that I was not imagining it. That is good. That is really good. Jessica smiled for the first time. Abusers think they are smarter than everyone. They think they can say whatever they want in private because no one will ever know. That is exactly how we catch them. She stood up and handed Emily a card. Get some rest. I will be back tomorrow, and we will start building your case. At the door, she paused. Emily, I want you to know something. I lost my sister to domestic violence. Her husband was charming and successful, and everyone thought she was the problem. By the time anyone believed her, it was too late. Her voice hardened. I am not going to let that happen to you. After she left, Emily lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside her window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. For the first time since Daniel left her in that landfill, she felt something other than fear. She felt angry. Detective Linda Harris had been working homicides for 2 decades. She had seen things that would give most people nightmares. She had learned to read crime scenes the way other people read books, finding stories in blood spatter and bullet trajectories in the positions of bodies. But something about the Emily Shaw case nagged at her. Something that did not quite fit. She sat in her office at 11 at night, surrounded by case files and coffee cups, staring at a photograph of Brooke Miller. The woman's face was perfectly composed, her smile practiced and professional. In the picture, she was standing next to Daniel Shaw at a company event, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Accessory to attempted murder. That was what they had charged her with. A follower, a helper, someone who went along with Daniel's plan because she was in love with him. But Harris had interviewed Brooke for 3 hours. And something about the woman's demeanor did not match that profile. She was too calm, too controlled. When Harry pushed her, Brooke did not panic or cry or beg for mercy the way most accessories did. She smiled. Harris pulled up Brooke's background check for the 10th time. The woman had appeared in Charlotte 3 years ago with a resume that checked out and references that praised her professionalism. Before that, she had lived in Tampa, Florida. Before that, Austin, Texas. 3 cities, 3 completely separate lives. Harris started digging. At 2 in the morning, she found the first discrepancy. Brooke's college transcripts listed a graduation date that conflicted with her employment history. A small thing, easy to overlook. But Harris had learned that small things often led to big secrets. She called a contact at the FBI and asked for a favor. By sunrise, she had her answer. Brooke Miller was not Brooke Miller. Her real name was Rebecca Warren, and she had left a trail of dead women behind her. The first was in Austin 6 years ago. A woman named Patricia Holloway, married to a wealthy tech executive. Patricia died in a car accident, single vehicle, no witnesses. Her husband collected $2 million in life insurance and remarried within a year. His new wife? A beautiful blonde assistant who had started working for him 8 months before Patricia's death. The second was in Tampa 3 years ago. A woman named Nina Shaw, married to a real estate developer. Nina drowned in her own pool in an apparent accident. Her husband, Daniel Shaw, collected $1.8 million in life insurance. Daniel's first wife, the woman whose photograph he had shown Emily with such carefully constructed grief. Harris sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She had assumed Daniel was the mastermind, the one pulling the strings. But looking at the pattern now, she saw a different picture entirely. Brooke Miller or Rebecca Warren or whatever her real name was, did not fall in love with dangerous men. She created them. The next morning, Harris arrived at the hospital with a file folder thick enough to make her arm ache. Emily was sitting up in bed, looking better than she had in days, color returning to her cheeks. "I need to show you something," Harris said without preamble, "and I need to warn you, it is going to be disturbing." She laid out the evidence piece by piece, the timeline of Brooke's movements, the pattern of wealthy men and dead wives, the insurance payouts that followed each tragedy. Daniel's first wife, Harris said quietly, Nina, she did not drown accidentally. She was murdered. And I believe Brooke is the one who orchestrated it. Emily's face had gone pale. She killed her. She killed Nina and got away with it. And then she moved on to her next target. Daniel was vulnerable, grieving, easily manipulated. She positioned herself as his support system, and within a year she was running his business and his life. Harris paused. "Emily, I do not think Daniel came up with the plan to abandon you. I think Brooke did. I think she has been doing this for years, moving from city to city, killing wives and collecting insurance money through the husbands she controls. A black widow." Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "She is a black widow. That is exactly what she is, and Daniel is not the mastermind. He is just another puppet." Emily was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was harder than Harris had ever heard it. "That does not make him innocent." "No," Harris agreed, "it does not. He made his choices. He drove you to that landfill and left you to die. Whatever Brooke manipulated him into, he is responsible for his own actions." "What happens now?" "I am presenting this evidence to the district attorney this afternoon. With the pattern of behavior and the connection to Nina's death, we can push for a full investigation into Brooke's background. If I am right, she has killed at least 2 women. Maybe more." True. Emily nodded slowly. "And Daniel? The case against him is solid. Walter's video, the insurance documents, your testimony. Even if his lawyers try to pin everything on Brooke, he was there. He participated. He is not walking away from this." After Harris left, Emily lay in bed, processing what she had learned. The woman she had trusted, the woman who had smiled and offered friendship while systematically destroying her life, was a serial killer. And Daniel, the man she had loved, had known. Maybe not everything, but enough. He had known about Nina. He had known what Brooke was capable of, and he had chosen her anyway. Emily's phone buzzed, a text from Jessica Lawson. "Heard from Detective Harris. This changes things. We have a real shot now. How are you holding up?" Emily typed her response slowly. "I am angry, really, really angry." Jessica's reply came immediately. Good. Anger is fuel. We are going to use it. The next 2 weeks were a blur of depositions, medical appointments, and strategy sessions with Jessica Lawson. Emily remained in the hospital, her condition stable but fragile, while the case against Daniel and Brooke slowly built momentum. Walter Hayes came to visit every few days. He had cleaned up since that night at the landfill, his beard trimmed, his clothes donated by a local shelter. But his eyes were the same, sharp and watchful, seeing things other people missed. "How are you doing?" Emily asked during one of his visits. "Better than I have in years." Walter sat in the chair beside her bed, his posture relaxed but alert. "Funny thing about having a purpose, makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. I cannot thank you enough for everything. You do not have to thank me." He looked at her steadily. "You saved yourself, Emily. I just made the phone call." On a Tuesday afternoon, Detective Harris called with good news. The district attorney had agreed to reopen the investigation into Nina Shaw's death. Combined with Brooke's pattern of behavior and Walter's video evidence, they had enough to push for attempted murder charges against both defendants. "We are presenting everything to the judge tomorrow," Harris said. "Walter's phone, Nina's autopsy report, the insurance documents. This is going to stick." Emily allowed herself to hope. She called Jessica with the update. She ordered celebratory takeout for dinner. She even slept through the night for the first time since the landfill. The next morning, her phone rang at 6:15. It was Detective Harris, and her voice was wrong. "Emily, something has happened." Emily's blood went cold. "What? What happened?" "The evidence locker was accessed last night. Someone used a clerk's credentials to get in after hours." Harris's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "Walter's phone is gone. The original video files, Nina's autopsy report, everything we were going to present today. It is all gone." "No," the word came out as a moan. "No, that is not possible. Someone has to have a copy. The backup files were deleted from the server. We are trying to recover them, but whoever did this knew what they were doing." Harris paused. "Emily, there is more. They arrested Walter this morning." "What?" "He is being charged with filing a false police report. The argument is that without the original video, there is no proof his testimony is accurate. Daniel's lawyer is claiming he fabricated the whole thing." Emily felt the room spinning around her. "That is insane. Walter saved my life. He has nothing to gain from lying." "I know that. You know that. But without the evidence, it is his word against theirs, and their lawyers are very, very good at making honest people look like liars." After Harris hung up, Emily sat in the hospital bed, numb with shock. 2 weeks of progress, 2 weeks of hope, erased in a single night. Brooke. It had to be Brooke. She had a mole in the police department, someone she had seduced or bribed or blackmailed into doing her dirty work. It was the same pattern she had used before, manipulating people in positions of power to protect herself. Emily's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in the landfill where you belong." She stared at the screen, her hands shaking. Then she threw the phone across the room, watching it shatter against the wall. Jessica arrived an hour later, her expression grim. "I heard about the evidence," she said, sitting down heavily. "This is bad, Emily. I'm not going to lie to you. They are going to get away with it." Emily's voice was flat. "They tried to kill me, and they are going to walk free." "Not necessarily." Jessica pulled out her phone. "I have been making some calls. There might be another way." "In what way?" "Walter had a cloud backup. He set it up years ago, back when he still had a home and a family. He forgot about it, but the account is still active. Detective Harris is working to recover the files right now." Emily felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. "So the video still exists?" "Maybe. We are not sure yet." Jessica's expression was cautious. "But even if we recover it, we have bigger problems. Walter's credibility has been destroyed. Any evidence he provides is going to be questioned. So what do? We find other witnesses, other evidence, something that does not depend on Walter's testimony." Emily was quiet for a moment. Then she remembered something. "Rachel," she said suddenly. "My friend Rachel Bennett. Brooke told me she was saying terrible things about me, and I believed her. But what if that was a lie? What if Brooke was trying to isolate me?" "Almost certainly," Jessica said. "That is textbook abuser behavior. Cut the victim off from their support system." Rachel knew Brooke. They met at company events. She might have noticed something, might have information we can use. Do you know how to reach her? Emily hesitated. I have not talked to her in months. I was so sure she had betrayed me. But if Brooke lied about that, she thought about all the phone calls she had ignored, all the texts she had left unanswered, all the months she had spent believing her best friend had turned against her. I need to call her, Emily said. I need to apologize and ask for help. Then do it. Jessica stood up. I am going to coordinate with Detective Harris on the cloud backup. You focus on Rachel. We need all the allies we can get. After Jessica left, Emily asked a nurse to bring her a new phone. Her hands trembled as she dialed Rachel's number, each ring feeling like an eternity. Rachel answered on the fourth ring. Emily? Her voice was cautious, uncertain. I saw the news. I have been trying to reach you for weeks. I know, I am so sorry. Emily's voice cracked. Brooke told me you were saying things about me, that you thought I was pathetic. I believed her. I should not have, but I did. She told me the same thing about you. Rachel's voice was heavy with realization. She said you did not want to see me anymore, that I was stressing you out. I thought I was respecting your wishes. She played us both. Emily wiped tears from her cheeks. Rachel, I need your help. They destroyed the evidence. They are going to let Daniel and Brooke walk free unless I can find something else. I am already in my car. Rachel's voice was fierce. I left the moment I saw what happened on the news. I will be there in 6 hours. You do not have to do that. Yes, I do. You are my best friend, Emily, and I have been waiting 3 months to tell Brooke Miller exactly what I think of her. She paused. Also, I have something. Text from Brooke from 2 years ago. She was asking weird questions about Daniel's finances, about his first wife. I thought it was strange, but I did not know what to do with it. Emily's heart leaped. Save those texts. Do not let anyone see them until you get here. I will guard them with my life. Rachel's voice softened. Hang in there, Em. We are going to get through this, together. The next 3 days were the worst of Emily's life. It started with the video. Not Walter's video, but something else entirely. Something that made Emily question whether she had finally lost her grip on reality. The clip appeared on social media first, spreading like wildfire through local news sites and gossip accounts. It showed Emily, or someone who looked exactly like Emily, sitting in what appeared to be a coffee shop. She was speaking directly to the camera, her voice calm and deliberate. I need to tell the truth, the woman in the video said. I made it all up. The landfill, the abandonment, all of it. Daniel never hurt me. I walked away from the car on my own because I wanted attention. I wanted people to feel sorry for me. The video continued for 3 minutes. The fake Emily confessing to mental instability, to lying to police, to ruining an innocent man's life. By the time it ended, comments were flooding in by the thousands. Knew she was lying. Poor Daniel. This woman is sick. She needs help. Justice for Daniel Shaw. Emily watched the video on her new phone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the screen. The woman in the footage looked exactly like her, sounded exactly like her, moved exactly like her. But Emily had never recorded those words. She had never even thought them. It is a deep fake, Jessica said when she arrived, her face pale with shock. They used artificial intelligence to create a fake video of you confessing. It is incredibly sophisticated, but it is not real. Anyone can see it is not real. That is not how it works. Jessica sat down heavily. The technology is so good now that most people cannot tell the difference. And once something goes viral, the truth does not matter. The damage is already done. Within hours, public opinion had shifted completely. Daniel Shaw transformed from villain to victim, a loving husband persecuted by a mentally ill wife. Brooke Miller became an innocent bystander caught up in someone else's drama. And Emily became the monster, the liar, the woman who cried wolf. That was the first catastrophe. The second came the next morning. Daniel's lawyer filed an emergency custody motion, citing the viral video as evidence that Emily posed a danger to her unborn child. He argued that a woman who would fabricate such elaborate lies clearly could not be trusted to care for a baby. The hearing happened so fast that Emily barely had time to prepare. Jessica objected to everything, citing the suspicious timing, the obvious manipulation, the lack of verification that the video was authentic. But the judge was cautious, unwilling to take risks when a child's safety might be at stake. Given the circumstances, the judge said, his voice heavy with reluctance, I am granting temporary custody of the minor child upon birth to Margaret Shaw. The mother will have supervised visitation rights pending further investigation. Emily screamed. She could not help it. The sound tore out of her chest like something dying, filling the courtroom with raw animal grief. Security guards had to physically restrain her as Daniel's mother smiled serenely from across the room. They were taking her baby. They were taking Grace. That was the second catastrophe. The third came 6 hours later. The stress of the custody hearing triggered what Emily's doctors had been trying to prevent for weeks. Her water broke at 4:15 in the afternoon, sending nurses rushing into her room with emergency equipment and urgent voices. Grace was born at 8:47 that evening, 6 weeks premature and fighting for every breath. Emily could not hold her. Her daughter was whisked away to the NICU, connected to tubes and wires and machines that beeped with mechanical heartlessness. Through the incubator's glass walls, Emily could see her tiny hands opening and closing, reaching for comfort that was not there. And because of the custody ruling, Emily could only watch. Margaret Shaw arrived at the hospital the next morning, armed with court documents that granted her access to the NICU. Emily stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself, as Daniel's mother held her daughter for the first time. She is beautiful, Margaret said, her voice carrying easily across the room. She looks just like Daniel did when he was born. Emily wanted to scream. She wanted to tear through the glass and rip her baby from that woman's arms. But she could not move. She could not speak. She could only stand there helpless, as the last piece of her life was taken away. That was the third catastrophe. 3 disasters in 3 days, her reputation destroyed, her baby taken, her body broken. Emily lay in her hospital bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and felt something inside her die. The hope she had been clinging to, the anger that had kept her fighting, all of it drained away until nothing remained but hollow emptiness. She had lost. They had won. Her phone rang. She ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, she picked up. Emily. Walter's voice was quiet but steady. I know what happened. I know you think it is over. It is over. Her voice was flat. They have my baby. They have everything. They do not have you. Walter paused. Listen to me. I was in worse spots than this in Afghanistan. Places where giving up was not just easy, it was logical. And you know what kept me alive? The people who wanted me dead always made one mistake. They got cocky. Brooke does not make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. You just have to look for them. His voice hardened. That video, Emily, the fake confession. Think about it. What did you say in it? I do not want to think about it. Think anyway. What exact words did you use? Emily forced herself to remember. The coffee shop, the camera, the carefully scripted confession. I said Daniel was innocent. I said I made everything up. I said, she paused. I said I wanted people to feel sorry for me. That exact phrase. Who else says that phrase? Emily's breath caught. Daniel. Daniel always said that. Whenever I tried to talk about my feelings, he would say I just wanted people to feel sorry for me. So whoever made that video knew things that only someone inside your house would know. Walter's voice was triumphant. They used Daniel's words, his exact words. That means Brooke did not make that video alone. She needed Daniel's input, and that proves they are still working together. Emily sat up slowly. For the first time in days, something other than despair stirred in her chest. That is not enough to prove anything in court. Maybe not by itself, but it is a start. Walter paused. You have your mind, Emily. You have your memory. You told me once that you remember everything. Every conversation, every detail. That is your weapon. They destroyed the physical evidence. They cannot destroy what is in your head. Emily closed her eyes. She thought about 4 years of marriage, 4 years of conversations and arguments in quiet moments that had seemed meaningless at the time. She remembered. I know how to prove the video is fake, she said slowly. And I know how to find the evidence we need. Then do it. Walter's voice was fierce. Fight back. Show them what happens when you underestimate Emily Shaw. After she hung up, Emily reached for her phone and called Jessica Lawson. I need you to find someone, Emily said. Nina Shaw's sister. She has been trying to reopen Nina's case for years. I think she has information we can use. Nina's sister? Jessica sounded surprised. How do you know about her? Daniel mentioned her once. He said she was crazy, obsessed with conspiracy theories. Emily paused. Which probably means she was right about everything. I will find her. Jessica's voice was sharp with renewed energy. What else? The deepfake video. I know how to prove it is fake. There is a phrase in it, something only Daniel would know. We need a digital forensics expert who can trace the creation of that video back to its source. Already on it, Rachel brought some text that might help too. Brooke was asking questions about Daniel's finances years before Nina died. We are building a timeline. Emily took a deep breath. One more thing. I need you to get me out of this hospital. The doctors said, I know what they said, but I cannot fight from a hospital bed. I need to be there when we take them down. Jessica was quiet for a moment. Are you sure about this? Emily thought about Grace, alone in the NICU. She thought about Walter, arrested for trying to help her. She thought about Nina, dead at the bottom of a swimming pool, her murder disguised as an accident. I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Margaret Shaw had always believed she was a good mother. She had raised Daniel alone after his father left, working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, sacrificing everything so her son could have opportunities she never did. When he graduated from college with honors, she cried. When he started his own business, she told everyone she knew. When he married Emily, Margaret had welcomed her with open arms, grateful that her son had found someone to share his life. Now standing in the NICU watching her granddaughter fight for breath, Margaret was not sure what she believed anymore. The doubts had started small. A comment here, an inconsistency there, things that did not quite add up. Daniel's story about the landfill had felt rehearsed, too smooth, too perfect. His grief for Emily had vanished the moment the cameras stopped rolling. And Brooke, always Brooke, hovering at the edges of everything, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Margaret remembered meeting Brooke for the first time 3 years ago. The woman had seemed helpful then, professional, dedicated to making Daniel's business successful. But looking back now, Margaret could see the pattern. The way Brooke had gradually inserted herself into every aspect of Daniel's life. The way she had isolated him from old friends, from family, from anyone who might question her influence. The way Nina had died just months after Brooke arrived. Margaret had not wanted to think about Nina. The police had ruled it an accident, and Daniel had been so devastated, so broken by loss. It had been easier to accept the official story than to imagine something darker. But Emily's accusations had forced her to look closer. And what she saw terrified her. 2 nights ago, Daniel had come to her house drunk. Really drunk. The way he used to get in college when something was wrong. Margaret had put him to bed in his old room, the one she had kept exactly as he left it, and sat beside him while he talked. He had said things, terrible things. Things about Brooke, about Nina, about what really happened at the landfill. Things that made Margaret realize her son was not the man she thought he was. She had recorded everything. Now watching her granddaughter's tiny chest rise and fall, Margaret made a decision. Daniel was her son. She loved him. She would always love him. But Grace was innocent, and some things mattered more than protecting the guilty. She found Emily in the hospital hallway, looking through the ICU window with an expression of raw longing that made Margaret's heart ache. The young woman looked terrible, pale and exhausted, and held together by nothing but will. Emily, Margaret's voice came out hoarse. We need to talk. Emily's eyes went hard. Get away from me. Please, just listen. Margaret held up her phone. I recorded Daniel 2 nights ago. He was drunk, and he told me everything. Emily's expression did not change. Why should I believe you? You stood next to him at that press conference. You told everyone I was crazy. I know, and I am sorry. Margaret's voice cracked. I believed my son because I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was too horrible to accept. But I cannot ignore the truth anymore. What truth? Margaret pressed play on the recording. Daniel's voice filled the hallway, slurred but unmistakable. Mom, I did not want to do it. Brooke said it was the only way. She said Emily would ruin everything. She said if I did not go along with it, she would tell everyone about Nina. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. The recording continued. Daniel, crying now, confessing that Brooke had planned everything. The life insurance, the landfill, the fake video. He had gone along with it because he was scared, because Brooke knew things about him, because she had made him complicit in Nina's death and used that knowledge to control him. I loved Emily, Daniel said on the recording, his voice breaking. I really did. But Brooke, she gets inside your head. She makes you believe things. She made me believe Emily was the problem, that getting rid of her was the only way to be free. The recording ended. Emily stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. He killed Nina. Her voice was barely a whisper. He helped Brooke kill his first wife. I do not know exactly what happened. Margaret's hands were shaking. But I know my son is responsible, and I know Brooke is the one pulling the strings. Why are you showing me this? He is your son. Margaret looked through the window at Grace, still fighting in her incubator. Because that baby in there deserves better than what my son can give her. Because, Emily, you did not deserve any of this. And because somewhere along the way, I stopped being the mother I wanted to be. She met Emily's eyes. I cannot undo what Daniel did, but I can help you stop him from doing it again. Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and called Jessica Lawson. I have new evidence, she said. Margaret Shaw has been recording her son. We have his confession. 3 hours later, they were all sitting in Jessica's office. Margaret, Emily, Detective Harris, Rachel, and Walter, who had been released from custody that morning when new evidence surfaced. The recording played again, filling the room with Daniel's broken voice. This changes everything, Harris said when it ended. Combined with Walter's cloud backup, which we recovered this morning, we have enough to arrest both of them. There is more, Emily said. She had been working with Rachel for hours, piecing together a timeline that stretched back years. Brooke Miller is not Brooke Miller. Her real name is Rebecca Warren. She has done this at least twice before, in Texas and Florida. She targets wealthy men, positions herself as their assistant, and eliminates their wives. A serial killer. Harris shook her head slowly, right under our noses. Daniel was not her partner. He was her victim. Emily's voice was hard, but that does not make him innocent. He made choices. He could have stopped this at any point, and he did not. What do you want to happen? Jessica asked. Emily looked at Margaret. The older woman's face was gray with grief, but her eyes were steady. I want the truth, Emily said. I want everyone to know what they did, and I want my daughter back. Harris stood up. Then let us go get them. The arrest happened at 7 in the morning before Daniel and Brooke had time to prepare. Emily was not there. Jessica had convinced her to stay at the hospital to be with Grace when the news broke. But Detective Harris called with the updates every 15 minutes, narrating the takedown in real time. Daniel did not resist. When the officers showed up at his apartment, he simply sat down on the couch and put his head in his hands. He looked, Harris said, almost relieved. Brooke was different. She tried to run. She had a bag packed by the door, cash and fake passports ready for a quick escape. When the officers blocked her exit, she turned charming, then threatening, then desperate. She offered bribes, made promises, dropped names of powerful people who would be very upset if she was not released immediately. None of it worked. Rebecca Warren, Harris said as the handcuffs clicked into place, you are under arrest for the murders of Patricia Holloway and Nina Shaw in the attempted murder of Emily Shaw. For the first time since Emily had known her, Brooke looked scared. The trial began 6 weeks later. Emily sat in the front row of the courtroom, Grace in her arms. Her daughter had been released from the NICU 3 weeks earlier, healthy and growing stronger every day. The temporary custody order had been reversed the moment Margaret's recording became public, and Emily had not let Grace out of her sight since. Rachel sat on one side of her, Walter on the other. Behind them, the courtroom was packed with reporters, advocates, and ordinary people who had followed the case from the beginning. The prosecution presented their evidence methodically. Walter's video, recovered from the cloud and authenticated by digital forensics experts. Margaret's recording of Daniel's confession, Nina Shaw's journals, obtained from her sister, documenting her fear of Brooke in the months before her death. The pattern of Rebecca Warren's previous identities, each one ending with a dead woman and a life insurance payout. Daniel testified against Brooke in exchange for a reduced sentence. He sat in the witness box, looking smaller than Emily remembered, and described how Brooke had manipulated him over years, how she had made him dependent on her approval, how she had used his guilt over Nina's death to ensure his silence. "She made me believe Emily was the enemy," he said, his voice hollow. "She made me believe that getting rid of her was the only way to be free. I know that is not an excuse. There is no excuse for what I did." Emily watched him without sympathy. Whatever Brooke had done to him, Daniel had made his own choices. He had driven her to that landfill. He had told her to get out of the car. He had left her to die. Some things could not be forgiven. Brooke's defense was aggressive but ultimately futile. Her lawyers tried to paint her as Daniel's victim, a woman manipulated by a controlling man. But the evidence was too strong, the pattern too clear. 3 states, 3 identities, 3 dead women. When Emily took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. She described everything: the gaslighting, the isolation, the slow erosion of her identity over 4 years of marriage, the drive to the landfill, the moment she realized her husband had brought her there to die, the terror of labor in the darkness, the kindness of a stranger who had chosen to help when everyone else had looked away. Brooke Miller, or Rebecca Warren, or whatever she calls herself, is not a victim, Emily said, her voice steady. She is a predator. She targets men she can control, and she eliminates anyone who gets in her way. Nina Shaw was not the first woman she killed. I was supposed to be the third. She looked directly at Brooke. But I am still here, and I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure no other woman goes through what I did. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Brooke Miller, real name Rebecca Warren, was found guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Daniel Shaw was found guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy. He received 25 years, with the possibility of parole after 15. Emily had pushed for more, but Jessica explained that his testimony against Brooke had been crucial. Without it, proving the full pattern of murders would have been nearly impossible. Justice, Emily learned, was rarely perfect, but it was better than nothing. After the verdicts were read, Emily stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters shouting questions. Grace was asleep in her arms, oblivious to the chaos around her. Walter stood beside her, cleaned up in a suit that did not quite fit, but made him look almost respectable. Rachel was on her other side, ready to run interference if the media got too aggressive. "Mrs. Shaw," a reporter called out, "what would you say to other women who might be in similar situations?" Emily thought about the question. She thought about all the nights she had spent doubting herself, wondering if she was crazy, believing the lies her husband told her because they were easier than the truth. "Document everything," she said finally. "Every text, every email, every conversation that makes you feel like you are losing your mind. Because you are not crazy. You are being manipulated. And one day that documentation might save your life." She paused, looking down at Grace. "And find your people, the ones who believe you even when the world does not. The ones who will fight for you when you do not have the strength to fight for yourself." She looked at Walter, then at Rachel. "I would not be standing here without the people who refuse to give up on me." The reporters continued shouting questions, but Emily had said everything she needed to say. She turned and walked away, her daughter in her arms, her friends beside her. Behind her, the courthouse doors closed on the chapter of her life she was determined to leave behind. 1 year later, Emily stood in front of a modest building in downtown Charlotte, watching workers hang a sign above the entrance, "Landfill to Light Foundation." The name had come to her in the hospital, during those dark days when she thought she had lost everything. She had been thrown away like garbage, left to dim among the discards of society. But she had survived, and now she was going to make sure other women knew they could survive too. The foundation had started small, a hotline for domestic violence survivors, a network of pro bono lawyers willing to help women escape abusive situations, a shelter for those who had nowhere else to go. But it had grown faster than Emily ever expected. Donations poured in from across the country after her story went national. Volunteers signed up by the hundreds. Other survivors reached out, sharing their own experiences, offering to help in any way they could. Jessica Lawson had joined the board of directors, bringing her legal expertise and fierce determination. Rachel Bennett had quit her corporate job to become Emily's partner in running the day-to-day operations. Detective Harris consulted on cases involving law enforcement, helping bridge the gap between survivors and a system that too often failed them. And Walter Hayes, the homeless veteran who had saved her life with nothing but a cracked phone and a steady hand, had found a new purpose. He worked as the foundation's intake coordinator, the first person survivors met when they walked through the door. His weathered face and gentle manner put people at ease, and his own story gave him credibility that no amount of training could provide. "You look good," Emily said, watching him hang a picture on the wall of the new office. Walter stepped back to examine his work. It was a photograph of the landfill at sunset, the same place where Emily had nearly died. But in this version, light was breaking through the clouds, transforming the wasteland into something almost beautiful. "I feel good," he said, "first time in years." "What changed?" He was quiet for a moment. "I stopped waiting to die, started living instead." Emily nodded. She understood exactly what he meant. Grace tottered across the office floor, her small legs still unsteady, her laughter filling the space with joy. She was 14 months old now, healthy and curious and blissfully unaware of the darkness that had surrounded her birth. Emily scooped her up, pressing a kiss to her soft hair. "What do you think, sweetheart? Do you like Mommy's new office?" Grace responded by grabbing Emily's nose and giggling. "I will take that as a yes." The grand opening was scheduled for that afternoon. Local politicians had confirmed their attendance. News cameras were already setting up outside. Everything Emily had worked for over the past year was about to become real. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she felt nervous. "Hey," Rachel appeared at her elbow holding a cup of coffee. "You okay?" "Just thinking about everything it took to get here. A lot of pain, a lot of work, a lot of people who believed in you when you could not believe in yourself. What if I fail? What if this whole thing falls apart?" Rachel laughed. You survived being abandoned at a landfill while 8 months pregnant. You took down a serial killer and exposed a corrupt system. You built a foundation from nothing while raising a baby on your own." She shook her head. "I do not think failure is in your vocabulary." Emily smiled despite herself. "When did you become the optimistic one?" "Around the time you became the one who needed a pep talk." Rachel squeezed her arm. "You have got this. Now go out there and change some lives." The ceremony went smoothly. Emily gave a speech about survival and resilience, about the importance of believing women, about the need for systems that protect the vulnerable instead of the powerful. She talked about Walter standing quietly at the back of the room and what it meant that a man society had forgotten had been the one to save her. She talked about Rachel and Jessica and Margaret, who was not present but who had sent flowers and a card expressing her support. She did not talk about Daniel. Some wounds were still too raw. After the speeches and the ribbon cutting and the endless photographs, Emily found herself alone on the foundation's small balcony, watching the sun set over Charlotte. Walter joined her a few minutes later, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Not bad for a couple of people who got thrown away," he said, handing her one. Emily took a sip. "I have been meaning to ask you something." "What is that?" "That night at the landfill. You could have walked away. You could have ignored what you and kept your head down, stayed out of trouble. Why did you help me?" Walter was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. 6 years ago, my wife and son were in a car accident. I was not there. I was working late, trying to make enough money to give them a better life. By the time I got to the hospital, they were both gone." Emily reached out and touched his arm. "After that, I stopped caring about anything. I figured if I could not save the people I loved most, what was the point of trying to save anyone?" He paused. "But when I saw you in that landfill, something changed. I realized that I had been looking at it all wrong. I could not save my family. But maybe I could save someone else's." "You did." Emily's voice was thick with emotion. "You saved me and Grace. You gave us a future. And you gave me one right back. Walter smiled, the expression transforming his weathered face. Funny how that works. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Behind them, the foundation's lights glowed warm and welcoming, a beacon for anyone lost in the darkness. So what happens now? Walter asked. Emily thought about the question. She thought about Grace, growing bigger every day. About the survivors who would walk through the foundation's doors tomorrow and the day after that. About the long road of healing that stretched out before her, filled with challenges she could not yet imagine. Now, she said slowly, we help other people find their way out of the landfill. Walter raised his coffee cup. I will drink to that. They clinked cups and turned back toward the light. 5 years later, Emily Shaw stood at the podium of a packed conference hall, looking out at an audience of hundreds. The Landfill to Light Foundation had grown beyond anything she had imagined. What started as a small nonprofit in Charlotte now had branches in 12 cities across the country. They had helped thousands of women escape abusive situations, provided legal assistance to countless survivors, and trained law enforcement agencies on recognizing and responding to domestic violence. But today was special. Today, they were launching something new. When I was thrown away 5 years ago, Emily said, her voice steady and strong, I believed I was alone. I believed that no one would come for me, that no one cared whether I lived or died. I believed the lies my abuser had told me for years. She paused, letting the words sink in. But I was wrong, because even in the darkest moment of my life, someone saw me. Someone chose to help when it would have been easier to look away. That person saved my life, and he taught me something I will never forget. She looked toward the front row where Walter sat with Grace on his lap. The little girl, 5 years old now, was watching her mother with wide and attentive eyes. He taught me that no one is truly invisible, no one is truly worthless, no one is truly alone, and that is why we are here today. Emily pressed a button and the screen behind her lit up with a new logo. No One Gets Left Behind Initiative. This program will provide emergency housing, legal assistance, and financial support to survivors of domestic violence who have nowhere else to turn. We will find them in shelters, in hospitals, in the places where they have been abandoned, and we will bring them back into the light. The audience burst into applause. Emily let it wash over her, then raised her hand for his silence. I want to introduce you to the man who inspired this initiative. He found me in a landfill, bloody and terrified and alone. He called for help when no one else would. And for the past 5 years, he has been helping survivors rebuild their lives, one person at a time. She smiled toward the front row. Walter Hayes, would you please join me? Walter stood slowly, Grace sliding off his lap to sit with Rachel. He walked to the podium with the careful gait of a man unused to being in the spotlight, but his eyes were clear and proud. I am not much for speeches, he said into the microphone, so I will keep this short. He looked out at the audience, then at Emily, then at Grace. 5 years ago, I was living in a landfill. I had lost everything that mattered, and I figured I would die there eventually. Then I heard a woman crying, and everything changed. He paused, collecting himself. Saving Emily did not just give her a future. It gave me one too. It showed me that even when you have lost everything, you still have something to give. You still have the choice to help someone else. He turned to face the audience directly. Every single person in this room has that choice. Every single way you can decide to see someone who feels invisible, to help someone who feels helpless, to bring someone back from the darkness. His voice strengthened. That is what this foundation is about. That is what No One Gets Left Behind means. We do not give up on people. We do not look away. We fight for each other, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. The applause that followed was thunderous. After the ceremony, Emily and Walter slipped away from the crowds, finding in a quiet corner where they could breathe. You did good up there, Emily said, for someone who is not much for speeches. I had a good teacher, Walter smiled. Little girl of yours is growing up fast. Too fast. Emily watched Grace across the room, chatting animatedly with Rachel about something that involved a lot of hand gestures. Sometimes I look at her and I cannot believe she is real. Cannot believe any of this is real. It is real. Walter's voice was firm. Every bit of it. The foundation, the initiative, that happy kid over there. You built all of this, Emily. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and turned it into something that will help people for generations. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. We built it. Together. Together, Walter agreed. They were quiet for a moment, watching the celebration continue around them. Politicians mingled with survivors. Donors chatted with volunteers. Somewhere, a photographer was taking pictures that would appear in newspapers the next morning. You know what I keep thinking about? Emily said finally. What is that? That night in the landfill, the moment when I was absolutely sure I was going to die. She shook her head slowly. If you had told me then that in 5 years I would be standing here, surrounded by people who love me, running an organization that helps thousands of women, I would have thought you were crazy. Sometimes the craziest things turn out to be true. Sometimes they do. Emily turned to face him. Thank you, Walter, for everything, for seeing me when no one else did, for believing me when no one else would, for standing beside me through all of it. You do not have to thank me. Walter's voice was gruff but warm. You would have done the same for me. Actually, I do have to thank you. Because tomorrow morning, some woman is going to walk through our doors, terrified and alone and convinced that her life is over. And she is going to meet you. And you are going to show her that it is not over, that there is hope, that someone cares. She smiled. That is something worth thanking you for. Grace came running over before Walter could respond, launching herself at Emily's legs with the boundless energy of a 5-year-old. Mommy, Aunt Rachel says there is cake. Can we have cake? Emily laughed, scooping her daughter up. I think we can definitely have cake. Uncle Walter too? Walter pretended to consider it. I suppose I could eat some cake if there is chocolate. There is lots of chocolate, Grace announced triumphantly. They walked toward the reception area together, the unlikely family that tragedy had forged. A woman who had been thrown away, a man who had been forgotten, and a child who had been born in darkness, but raised in light. Emily paused at the door, looking back at the banner hanging over the stage. No one gets left behind. 5 years ago, she had been left behind, abandoned, discarded, meant to disappear. But she had not disappeared. She had survived. She had fought. She had built something that would outlast her, something that would help women she would never meet, in cities she would never visit, during moments that would have otherwise ended in despair. The people who threw her away had wanted her to be forgotten. Instead, she had become unforgettable. Emily smiled, shifted Grace on her hip, and walked forward into the light. Behind her, the foundation's doors stayed open, because somewhere out there, someone else was waiting to be found.